I witnessed my wife cheating on me right in our home. The moment I walked through my front door and heard those sounds coming from upstairs, I knew my 8-year marriage was about to end in the most brutal way possible. But what I discovered next would make that betrayal look like child's play. Let me start from the beginning, because this story gets darker than you can imagine. My name's Jake, I'm 34, and until 3 weeks ago, I thought I had the perfect life. Beautiful wife Sarah, nice house in the suburbs, decent job as a software engineer, and what I believed was a rock-solid marriage. We'd been together since college, married for 8 years, and I genuinely thought we were happy. Shows how much I knew, right? It all started on a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were always our grocery shopping days, and Sarah had insisted she'd handle alone this week. Said she wanted to surprise me with something special for dinner. Looking back, that should have been red flag number one, but I was too trusting, too stupid, too in love. I've been working from home that day, grinding through some particularly nasty code that had been giving me headaches for weeks. Around 2 p.m., I finally cracked it. The relief was incredible. You know that feeling when you've been banging your head against a problem for days, and suddenly everything clicks? I was so pumped that I decided to call it early and surprise Sarah by cooking dinner myself when she got back for shopping. That's when I realized I'd left my good chef's knife at my buddy Mike's place after the barbecue last weekend. Mike lived about 20 minutes away, so I figured I'd zip over, grab the knife, maybe grab a beer with him, and be back before Sarah returned. I shot her a quick text letting her know, grabbed my keys, and headed out. Mike wasn't home. His neighbor said he'd left for a work trip that morning. Damn. I stood there on his porch for a minute, trying to remember if he'd mentioned anything about traveling, but honestly, Mike was always going somewhere for his sales job. I figured I'd just use one of our regular knives and make do. The drive back home took less time than expected. Hit every green light, barely any traffic. As I pulled into our driveway, I noticed Sarah's car was already there. That was weird. She usually took forever at the grocery store, especially when she was planning something special. Plus, where were the grocery bags? I walked up to the front door, and that's when I heard it. Sounds. Coming from upstairs. From our bedroom. At first, my brain tried to rationalize it. Maybe she was moving furniture around? Maybe she was watching something on her laptop? But deep down, in that place where your gut instincts live, I knew exactly what I was hearing. The rhythmic creaking, the muffled sounds. My hand started shaking as I put the key in the lock. Here's where most people would burst through that door screaming. But I'm not most people. I'm methodical. I'm careful. And I was about to use those traits to gather evidence that would change everything. I slipped inside as quietly as possible. The sounds were definitely coming from our bedroom, and they were definitely what I thought they were. My heart was hammering so hard I was sure they'd hear it downstairs. I stood in our foyer, listening to my wife having sex with another man in the bed we shared, and something cold settled in my chest. I could have stormed upstairs. I could have kicked down the door and confronted them. But something made me stop. Maybe it was the programmer in me, always thinking 3 steps ahead, always considering the bigger picture. Or maybe it was just shock. But I realized I needed proof. Solid, undeniable proof. I pulled out my phone and started recording audio. My hands were trembling so badly, I almost dropped it twice. The sounds continued for what felt like hours, but was probably only 10 minutes. When everything went quiet, I heard voices, Sarah's definitely, and a man's voice I didn't recognize. That's when I made a decision that would haunt me for the rest of my life. I crept upstairs. I know. Stupid move. Dangerous move. But I wasn't thinking clearly. I was operating on pure adrenaline and betrayal and this weird, detached curiosity about who had destroyed my marriage. I needed to see his face. I needed to know who he was. Our bedroom door was slightly ajar. Sarah never closed it all the way because it had this annoying squeak. I positioned myself where I could see through the crack, and what I saw, Jesus. Sarah was lying in our bed with the sheets we'd picked out together on our honeymoon, with a man I'd never seen before. He was tall, dark hair, probably in his 30s. Good looking, I guess, if you're into that whole rugged construction worker vibe. They were talking quietly, and she was tracing patterns on his chest with her finger. The intimacy of it was worse than the sex itself. This wasn't some random hookup. This was comfortable, familiar, like they'd done this before, many times. But what happened next would make this simple affair look like a Disney movie. I was backing away from the door, trying to process what I'd seen, when my phone buzzed. A text message. The sound was quiet, but in the complete silence of the house, it might as well have been a fire alarm. Everything stopped. I heard Sarah whisper something urgently, and suddenly there was movement in the bedroom. Fast movement. I had maybe 3 seconds before they'd investigate, and I was standing in the middle of the hallway like an idiot. I bolted for the guest room and slipped inside just as I heard our bedroom door open fully. My heart was beating so loud, I was convinced they could hear it through the walls. I stood there, pressed against the guest room door, listening to footsteps in the hallway. The man's voice, clearer now. Probably nothing. Just your phone. Sarah's voice, tense. Jake's not supposed to be back for hours. Relax. Even if he comes home, we'll hear his car in the driveway. Footsteps moving back toward the bedroom. The door closing. And then, after a few minutes, the sound started again. I was trapped in my own house, listening to my wife cheat on me, unable to leave without being discovered. It was surreal, horrifying, and it was about to get so much worse. I sat on the floor of the guest room for over an hour, listening to them. At some point, I started going through Sarah's behavior over the past few months, looking for signs I'd missed. And oh boy, were there signs. The new workout routine that had her gone for hours. The sudden interest in girls' nights that happened twice a week. The way she'd started putting her phone face down and taking it with her everywhere, even to the bathroom. The new lingerie I'd never seen her wear. The subtle changes in how she kissed me, touched me, like she was comparing me to someone else. How had I been so blind? And then I heard something that made my blood run cold. They were talking again, and their voices were carrying through the heating vents. Something about next week and the plan and my name. They were talking about me. I pressed my ear to the vent, trying to catch every word. Told you, he's completely clueless, Sarah was saying. He trusts me completely. It's almost pathetic. The man laughed. Poor bastard. So we're definitely going through with it. The insurance money will set us up for life. Marcus, we can finally be together without sneaking around. Insurance money. My life insurance policy. The one Sarah had been so insistent we increase last year. The one where she was the sole beneficiary. They were planning to kill me. I sat there on the guest room floor, staring at the wall, trying to process what I just heard. My wife wasn't just cheating on me. She was planning to murder me for the insurance money so she could run off with her lover. This was no longer about infidelity. This was about survival. The next 30 minutes were the longest of my life. I had to get out of that house, but I also had to do it without them knowing I'd been there. If they suspected I'd overheard their plan, they might accelerate their timeline. They might try to kill me immediately and make it look like a break-in gone wrong or something. I used the time to think, to plan. The programmer in me kicked into overdrive, analyzing every possible scenario, every potential outcome. I had evidence of the affair, but the murder plot? That was just voices through a vent. I needed more. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I heard them getting dressed. More quiet conversation I couldn't make out, then footsteps on the stairs. I waited until I heard a car start in the driveway before I dared to move. I crept to the guest room window and watched Marcus drive away in a black pickup truck. I memorized the license plate number, took a photo of it with my phone, and waited another 10 minutes to make sure he was really gone. When I finally emerged from the guest room, Sarah was in the kitchen, humming while she unloaded grocery bags that definitely hadn't been there when I arrived. She'd actually gone grocery shopping after her murder planning sex session. The normalcy of it was terrifying. "Hey, babe," she called out cheerfully when she saw me. "How was Mike's place?" I stood there looking at her, this woman I'd loved for over a decade, who'd just been plotting my death and managed to keep my voice steady. He wasn't home. Work trip. Oh, that's too bad. Well, I got everything for that special dinner I mentioned. Hope you're hungry. She walked over and kissed me on the cheek, the same cheek she'd probably kissed Marcus with an hour earlier, and I had to fight every instinct not to recoil. Starving, I managed to say. That night was the performance of my life. I ate dinner with my would-be murderer, made small talk about our days, even laughed at her jokes, all while my mind was racing, trying to figure out my next move. I couldn't go to the police, not yet. I heard voices through a vent, wasn't exactly solid evidence of a murder plot, and if they investigated and found nothing, Sarah and Marcus wouldn't know I was onto them. I needed more evidence. I needed to catch them red-handed, discussing the details of how they planned to kill me. Over the next week, I became a different person. By day, I was the same loving husband I'd always been. By night, I was a spy in my own home, gathering intelligence on a plot to end my life. I installed hidden cameras in our bedroom, living room, and kitchen. Tiny things you could buy online, motion-activated, with audio recording capabilities. I put tracking software on Sarah's phone, something I'd never imagined doing to someone I loved, but then again, I'd never imagined someone I loved would want me dead. I followed her twice to confirm where she was meeting Marcus. A cheap motel about 15 minutes from our house. Room 237. I took photos of them going in together, time-stamped everything, built a comprehensive file of evidence. But I still needed to hear them discuss the murder plot again. I needed something concrete, something the police couldn't ignore. The opportunity came sooner than I expected, and it was more horrifying than I could have imagined. Sarah announced she was going out for another girls' night on Friday, instead of her usual routine, though she told me she might be staying overnight at her friend Jennifer's place because they were planning to drink. Another lie, but a useful one. It meant I could follow her without worrying about getting home before she did. I watched her leave, waited 10 minutes, then drove to the motel. Marcus's truck was already there. I parked where I could see room 237 and settled in to wait, my phone ready to record anything I might overhear. Around 10 p.m., they came out onto the little balcony outside their room. They were drinking, relaxing, and, thankfully for me, talking loudly enough for my phone to pick up their conversation from my car. And what I heard chilled me to the bone. They had a plan, a detailed, methodical plan. Marcus worked in construction and had access to industrial equipment. He was going to stage an accident at one of his job sites, make it look like I'd been there to meet him about some fictional project Sarah had supposedly hired him for. A tragic accident involving heavy machinery. Quick, clean, and completely believable. Sarah had already started planting seeds about this fictional project. She'd mentioned to neighbors that we were thinking about redoing our back deck. Had even shown them some business cards she'd gotten from a contractor a friend recommended. Those business cards had Marcus's real name and number on them. The timeline was set for the following Saturday. Marcus had a job site that would be empty on weekends. Sarah would suggest we go look at his work to get ideas for our deck. I'd have an accident, and she'd be the grieving widow collecting $1 million life insurance payout. They had it all figured out. Every detail, every contingency, except one. They had no idea I was sitting in a car 50 feet away, recording every word. I stayed until they went back inside, then drove home in a daze. I had them. I had everything I needed to prove they were planning to murder me. The affair, the motive, the detailed plan, all of it recorded, photographed, documented. But I still had one problem. I had to survive until I could get this evidence to the police. Saturday was 6 days away. 6 days of pretending everything was normal while living with someone who was planning to kill me. 6 days of sleeping next to a woman who was counting down the hours until I'd be dead. I barely slept that night. Every time Sarah shifted in bed, I wondered if she decided to move up the timeline. Every noise in the house made me jump. By morning, I was exhausted and paranoid, but I had to maintain the facade. Sarah was extra affectionate that weekend, which made sense in the most twisted way possible. She was probably feeling guilty about the upcoming murder and overcompensating. She made my favorite breakfast, suggested we watch a movie together, even initiated sex, which I somehow managed to go through with despite knowing what she was planning. Monday morning, I made a decision that probably saved my life. I couldn't wait until Saturday. I couldn't spend another 5 days living with my potential killer, pretending everything was fine. I needed to end this now. I called in sick to work and drove straight to the police station. Detective Lisa Rodriguez listened to my story with a mixture of fascination and skepticism. I showed her everything: the photos, the audio recordings, the evidence of the affair, the detailed murder plot I'd overheard at the motel. "This is comprehensive," she said, looking through my files. "You've been busy. I've been trying to stay alive." She studied the photos of Sarah and Marcus, listened to the audio recordings of their conversations. When she got to the part where they discussed the specifics of how they were going to kill me, her expression hardened. "We're going to need to move fast on this," she said. "If they suspect you know anything, they don't. I've been very careful." "Good. Here's what we're going to do." The plan was elegant in its simplicity. I would go home and act normal. The police would begin surveillance immediately, monitoring both Sarah and Marcus. On Saturday, when Sarah suggested we go look at Marcus's construction work, I would wear a wire and go along with it. The moment Marcus made any move to harm me, a team of undercover officers would move in. It was risky, but it was the only way to catch them in the act of attempted murder. The next few days were a special kind of hell. Knowing that help was just a phone call away made it easier, but I still had to live with someone who was planning to kill me in 4 days. I had to eat meals with her, watch TV with her, sleep in the same bed, all while knowing she was mentally rehearsing my death. Wednesday night, she brought up the deck project. "I've been thinking more about that back deck renovation," she said over dinner. "Remember I mentioned that contractor Marcus? He said he could show us some of his work this weekend if we're interested." My blood turned to ice, but I managed to keep eating. "Oh yeah? That sounds good. Saturday morning work for you? He said he has a job site we could look at, get some ideas. Sure. I took a sip of water to buy myself time. Where's the job site? Some office complex he's working on. Out on Industrial Drive. Industrial Drive. Perfect place for an accident. Lots of heavy equipment. Isolated area. No witnesses on weekends. Sounds perfect, I said, and meant it. By Saturday afternoon, this nightmare would finally be over. Friday night, Sarah was practically glowing with anticipation. She'd done her hair, put on makeup, even bought a new outfit for our deck consultation. She was dressing up for my murder. The thought was so surreal I almost laughed. She was also being extra sweet, which I now understood was guilt. She kept telling me how much she loved me, how lucky she was to have me, how excited she was about our future together. Every word was like a knife twist. I lay awake most of that night, staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathe beside me. Tomorrow, one way or another, this would all be over. Either I'd be dead, or she'd be in custody. There was no middle ground. Saturday morning arrived gray and drizzly. Perfect weather for a murder, I thought grimly. Sarah was up early, making breakfast and chattering excitedly about the deck project. I went through the motions, ate the eggs she'd made, drank the coffee, all while the wire the police had given me pressed against my chest under my shirt. Ready to go see Marcus's work? She asked, practically bouncing with excitement. Let me just grab my jacket. In the bedroom, I checked my phone one last time. Detective Rodriguez had texted, "Team in position. You're covered. Be safe." The drive to Industrial Drive was surreal. Sarah kept up a steady stream of chatter about deck designs and construction materials, playing her role perfectly. If I hadn't known what was really happening, I would have thought she was genuinely excited about home improvement. Marcus's job site was exactly what I'd expected, a half-built office complex surrounded by heavy machinery, completely deserted on a Saturday morning. Perfect for an accident. Marcus was waiting for us by a large excavator, wearing work clothes and a hard hat. He waved as we pulled up, playing the part of the friendly contractor. "Jake, great to finally meet you, man. Sarah's told me so much about you." "I'll bet she has," I thought, shaking his hand. "Good to meet you too, Marcus. So, you guys are thinking about a deck? Let me show you some of the work we've been doing here. Really gives you a sense of what's possible with the right equipment." He led us toward the excavator, chattering about construction techniques and material costs. Sarah walked beside me, her hand in mine, playing the loving wife right up until the end. The moment came sooner than I expected. Marcus had positioned us near the excavator, ostensibly to show us how the machine worked. He climbed up into the operator's seat and started the engine. "Now, Jake, if you could just stand right there by the bucket, I'll show you how we move material around." The bucket was massive, easily capable of crushing a person. If I stood where he indicated and he accidentally swung it toward me. I looked at Sarah. She was watching me intently, waiting for me to move into position. This was it, the moment they'd been planning for weeks. I took a step toward the excavator bucket, and Marcus's hand moved toward the controls. "Police! Freeze!" The shout came from 3 directions at once. Undercover officers emerged from behind construction equipment, vehicles, and building materials, all with guns drawn. Marcus's face went white. He raised his hands immediately, but I could see him calculating whether he could still swing that bucket and kill me before the cops could stop him. Sarah, on the other hand, played dumb beautifully. "What's going on?" she asked, looking around in apparent confusion. "Officers, what's happening?" Detective Rodriguez appeared beside me. "Ma'am, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder." The acting performance that followed was Oscar-worthy. Sarah's confusion seemed genuine. Her shock appeared real. Her tears looked heartfelt. If I hadn't seen and heard everything myself, I might have believed she was an innocent victim caught up in some terrible misunderstanding. "Murder? What are you talking about? We're here to look at deck designs." "Ma'am, we have recordings of you and Mr. Patterson planning to kill your husband for insurance money." "That's insane. Jake, tell them this is crazy." She turned to me with such perfect bewilderment that for a split second, I almost doubted my own memories. But then Detective Rodriguez played the audio recording from the motel balcony. Sarah's voice, clear as day. "The insurance money will set us up for life, Marcus. We can finally be together without sneaking around." Marcus's voice. "Poor bastard. So we're definitely going through with it." Sarah's voice again. "He's completely clueless. He trusts me completely." It's almost pathetic. The color drained from Sarah's face as she heard her own words played back to her. The performance was over. The aftermath was a media circus. Local news picked up the story, Software engineer catches wife planning his murder, and it went viral. I had reporters calling me, neighbors stopping by with casseroles and questions, co-workers treating me like some kind of celebrity. Sarah and Marcus were both charged with conspiracy to commit murder in the first degree. The evidence was overwhelming. The audio recordings, the photographs, the detailed plan, the fact that they'd been caught red-handed at the murder scene. During the investigation, more details emerged that made the whole thing even more sordid. Sarah and Marcus had been having an affair for over a year. They'd been planning my murder for at least 3 months. Marcus had used his construction connections to scout out the perfect location and method. Most disturbing of all, they'd been practicing. Marcus had several accident scenarios worked out, complete with backup plans in case the first attempt failed. If the excavator thing hadn't worked, they were prepared to try again with a different method. I testified at both of their trials. Seeing Sarah in the defendant's chair, wearing an orange jumpsuit instead of the designer clothes she used to love, was surreal. She looked smaller, somehow diminished. The woman I'd loved for over a decade was gone, replaced by this stranger who'd wanted me dead. Marcus got 25 years. Sarah got 30. The jury was particularly offended by the betrayal of marriage vows, apparently. But here's the thing nobody expected, including me. I'm actually grateful this happened. I know that sounds insane. My wife tried to have me killed for money. That should be the worst thing that ever happened to me, right? But it's not. Because living with someone who doesn't love you, who's only staying with you for security and convenience, who's actively betraying you every day, that's not living at all. That's just existing in a lie. The truth, even when it's horrible, is better than a beautiful lie. After the trials, I sold the house. Too many bad memories. I moved across the country, started fresh in Seattle. New job, new apartment, new life. I've been in therapy, obviously, working through trust issues, learning to recognize red flags I missed before, trying to understand how I could have been so blind to what was happening in my own marriage. But I'm not bitter. I'm not angry. I'm just free. Free from living a lie. Free from being married to someone who saw me as nothing more than a paycheck. Free from the suffocating normalcy of a relationship that was slowly killing me from the inside. And here's the best part, the part that makes this story worth telling. 6 months after I moved to Seattle, I met someone. Her name's Amanda. She's a veterinarian, and she's nothing like Sarah. She's honest, direct, sometimes brutally so. She says what she means and means what she says. She doesn't play games or manipulate or scheme. When I told her about Sarah and the murder plot, because I had to tell her it was all over the internet anyway, she listened to the whole story without judgment. Then she said, "Well, at least I know you're good at gathering evidence. That'll come in handy if I ever need to prove to you that I'm not trying to kill you." Dark humor, but it made me laugh. Really laugh for the first time in years. We've been together for 8 months now. We're talking about moving in together, maybe getting married someday. But this time, I'm paying attention. I'm present. I'm not taking anything for granted. The final twist? Last week, I got a letter from Sarah in prison. She wanted to apologize, she said. She wanted me to know that she'd never stopped loving me, that the whole thing with Marcus was just a mistake, that if I would just visit her, she could explain everything. She included a visiting form, already filled out with my information. I read the letter 3 times, then threw it away. Some mistakes don't deserve forgiveness. Some betrayals are too deep to heal. Some people are exactly who they show you they are when they think no one is watching. Sarah showed me who she really was, and I'm grateful I found out before it was too late. These days, I sleep peacefully. I don't check my phone obsessively. I don't wonder where my partner is or who she's with. I don't live in fear or suspicion or that constant low-level anxiety that comes from knowing something is wrong but not knowing what. I live in truth. Messy, complicated, sometimes painful truth. And it's the most beautiful thing in the world. So to anyone reading this who thinks their relationship might be too good to be true, or who has that nagging feeling that something isn't quite right, trust your instincts. Pay attention. Ask questions. Because the truth, no matter how ugly, is always better than the most beautiful lie. And sometimes, the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the best thing that ever happened to you. Just not in the way you expected. Update. Amanda and I got engaged last month. The ring belonged to her grandmother, and it's nothing like the one I gave Sarah. It's simple, honest, real, just like everything else about our relationship. I'm not saying I'm glad my wife tried to have me killed, but I am saying that sometimes the universe has a funny way of saving you from yourself. Sometimes the worst betrayal is actually the greatest gift. Trust me on this one.